Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Living on Blockchain. Today, we are speaking to Dr. Chandra Duggirala. He is the CEO of Tides.Network. He is also the core contributor to Portal to Bitcoin. Basically, they are building a decentralized finance infrastructure focused on custodyless cross-chain solutions. Prior to Portal, he founded Fuel, which pioneers AI-driven personalized nutrition, and Novobionics as well, where he invented a minimally invasive medical device for treating diabetes. He's a physician by training who has turned into a technocrat. Chandra combines deep technical expertise with a vision for eliminating friction in the blockchain infrastructure. This was a very interesting conversation because he comes from deep experience and knowledge, which is very diversified. What they're building is definitely very pertinent and required. I think anybody who is getting in this space, starting off in Web3, trying to build in terms of infra, especially should listen to this particular conversation. I can't wait for you guys to hear this. Let's deep dive right in. Hi, Chandra. Thank you so much for making the time to speak to me today. How are you doing?
Doing great. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. For our listeners, can you tell us a little about yourself and how you got into Web3? And then perhaps, post that, we can talk a little about what you're doing currently.
Sure. So my background is a little atypical for a Web3 founder. So I went to medical school, and after medical school, I was, after residency training, I was in grad school doing PhD in biophysics. And I decided that the academic track, initially I was going to be an MD PhD doing running some sort of an academic research program at a university, but that didn't fit my style. So I moved to Silicon Valley from the Northeast and started my first medical technology company. And then after a couple of software companies, one was actually the first AI nutrition co-pilot. This was back in 2017 when we exited that company and was basically looking for things to do or, kind of take a sabbatical and learn what to do next. That was when Ethereum came out and a lot of Ethereum projects, ERC20 projects, and other layer one started coming out. And so took 6 months to kind of learn the basics, which I first got acquainted with in 2011 with Bitcoin. I mined Bitcoin in 2011 out of interest. Never thought I would have any interest in business in that space or that Bitcoin would go anywhere, because it was we were all at that time pretty confident that the governments are going to react very adversely to this concept of stateless money. But in 2017, with all of these ICOs and stuff, I actually spent the full year refamiliarizing myself with the Bitcoin network, the architecture, all of the different trade-offs that were made, and all of the other new things that were coming out, including ZK snarks and all the interesting stuff at that time. Towards the end of that, I was interested to see that there's a lot of demand for this speculation or exchange in this space, right? Like Binance got started that year, if I remember correctly.
Right. Yes.
And almost every day you could get news of an exchange being hacked or some exchange rug pulling their users or some form of a custodial loss. So at the end of maybe mid 2018, end of 2018, me and my co-founders from my previous startup said, we know how to build software, and this complete experience of the term Web3 wasn't there then. It was crypto, altcoins and Bitcoin and alts. This entire experience from how you own to how you purchase to how you trade is completely fundamentally broken. And so why don't we just build good software to fix these problems? And that's how the Portal project started. And then we further identified that the biggest problem in this space happens to be custodial risk. And, I can go into a little bit of that if you want me to.
Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
The conclusion at the end was that the toughest problem was that when you want to trade your coins, right? Let's say you have Bitcoin, I have Ethereum, and we wanted to trade. There was this old problem with an informal proof in computer science called the fair exchange problem, dating back to 1996, where if two parties are separated in time and space, there's no way to guarantee a fair exchange, which means within a defined period of time, if I send you my coins first, there's no guarantee that I will get your coins. And the same thing happens in reverse. And that remained an unsolved unsolved problem until 2011, when an anonymous poster by the name of Tier Nolan created this unique way of, after the blockchains and Bitcoin, now we have these systems that have self-enforcing contracts based on pre-existing logic. And now you have a way of ensuring a fair exchange between two different blockchains, and that's called an atomic swap. And so a lot of our research from 2019 to 2023 focused on that, how to make sure that the centralized exchange or the bridge or the vault or multi-sig problem is solved forever. Because all of these different techniques people use are forms of custody. The era of 2010 to 2019 was the era of centralized exchanges, right? That started with Mt. Gox and ended badly with FTX. Of course, there are some still going. In 2019, people invented the concept of a bridge where instead of custodying somebody else's coins at a centralized exchange, a bunch of validators will custody some coins and they'll issue these IOUs on the other blockchain called, by different names, right? They're wrapped assets. There are, you could call them derivatives. Some form of this form of custody is called bridging.
Right.
And so 2019 to 2024 was the era of custody, and even that was, most people don't know, has ended in a lot of loss for users. About $8 billion was lost in bridge hacks in last year alone. So it's pretty bad. So the technology that we've built actually make cross-chain DeFi completely custodyless, and it is consumer grade. So it's fast, it's cheap, it is seamless user experience. So we're bringing the ideal user experience, which is the centralized exchange user experience, to a consumer grade product where there is absolutely no custodian in the middle. So you don't have to play these shenanigans where you say, oh, it's non-custodial because 17 validators signed for it. It's, there's no none of those things. And as far as we're aware, it's the only truly non-custodial cross-chain infrastructure in the world that works with Bitcoin.
Okay, that's very interesting. So this is Portal to Bitcoin that you guys have created. Can you tell me a little more about the team behind this?
Yeah. So the team is about 43 people. Large now. So I'm the CEO of the development lab that is the core contributor to the Portal project. Our CTO Manoj is an engineer with more than 15 years experience. Stanford, did his engineering at Stanford. Then worked at InvenSense designing the M2 coprocessor that was actually the motion coprocessor Apple put in its first watch and in iPhone 5, I believe. He was the lead of the design team there. Wrote the pioneering AI work on that chip design. The rest of our engineering team is most of them are on our website, but deep, our roots go back to building like real deep tech in the Bay Area, and we take the exact same approach when it comes to whether it's Web3 or whatever good software development practice or good software development practice. You may have to learn new domains, but that's just the way it is.
Right. Yeah. No, this is super exciting that you have created something which is one of a kind for Bitcoin, a fully custodyless cross-chain infrastructure. And I think you have recently launched your testnet. And what has been the response so far? Can you tell us a little about that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, so we launched our private testnet only for our community. Meaning the members of our community about 2 weeks ago. We were expecting, or actually we kind of restricted the use to only users who attained a certain status of a galactic jelly. Jellyfish is our mascot, and there's levels of these jellies that we give people based on their contribution in the community. And we initially restricted it to a few thousand. And then before we know it, in 10 days, it ends up getting like 130,000, users, 160,000 different wallets, 1.9 million transactions. The whole thing blows up, and it basically challenged every single infrastructure bottleneck that we expected and didn't expect. For example, it broke, the Sepolia testnet on Ethereum gas fees went up by 5% because of just the amount of transactions happening on our Mutinynet, which runs runs the BTC testnet actually stopped working because they thought they were under DDoS attack. And so we
Wow.
ended up having to fork and run our own BT testnet. So yeah, it was overwhelming, but in a good way. And with that, we actually accelerated the development, and a lot of things that would have been fixed in the future ended up being fixed now because they had to be.
Good problems
And
to
now
solve.
we're absolutely not fun, but good problem.
Yeah.
The end result of that is we've decided that we kind of maxed out the capacity of all these test nets. I mean, these test nets were never built for scale, right? And they were never tested or stress tested at the level that we did to them. So, we've made the decision to just accelerate the timeline to mainnet because everything works better on mainnet for cross infrastructure like ours.
Right. Okay. So this is all sounding very exciting that your testnet has had such a rave response. When are you what is the timeline for main? When are you looking to go live for everyone at large so that we can try it out as well?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Of course, it depends on validator consensus and a couple other factors, but the target is January.
Okay.
The incentivized testnet will continue to run as promised, and we are doing a light node drop. So Portal Network has different levels of nodes. There's the validator nodes that are auctioned off every epoch, and people have to participate in the auction to win that. But apart from that, there are validator nodes that are not hardware and software intensive that just keep. You can think of them as a full node equivalent of Bitcoin on the Portal Network, but they get token emission, 5% of the emission part, and so there are good rewards, and those are limited in number, and they'll continue to have these emissions throughout the lifetime of the emissions of the network. So they're being given away in the incentivized testnet now. That'll continue to run its course, and then we will hopefully be in mainnet by Jan.
Okay, awesome. And if somebody does want to give your testnet, take it out for a run, can they do that, or is it still?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's open to public. We just opened it yesterday, and so it's open to public now, which basically means that anybody can go to nodes.com and participate in download the Chrome extension or the iOS version of the Dex app, and then just participate in incentivized testing.
Okay, awesome. So we'll surely put in that particular link, nodes.portal2bitcoin.com, in our description of this particular episode so that more people can participate in your incentivized testnet. Now, I would love to sort of talk a little about the community because you've mentioned such a rave response, and we have a lot of entrepreneurs tuning in as well. You are somebody who has, as you mentioned, a bit of an atypical background, but not necessarily from a marketing and community side. Can you tell us a little about how you managed to create such a supportive community for your product? Obviously, the product itself has to be good for the community to be that excited, but there is a little bit of groundwork that has to be laid so that the community is as engaged as yours. So can you tell us a little about that?
Absolutely. So obviously we had to do learning ourselves. In the community, a part of product development, it's part of marketing, it's a part of every function. And that's kind of a hard lesson and transition for many entrepreneurs who come from traditional startup background. But the philosophy behind making community a part of it, every part of every function, if you instead start with the community, you can test the value proposition. They will give you the feedback. They will actually be happy and involved that their feedback is incorporated. So mix their ideas, their creativity, and their ideas are actually built in collaboration with them. And then that extends to every part of it, right? Like you go down the route of customer. There's no way we can still who have identified the problems, got the problems fixed, created these user guides, error guides, all of that stuff. And there's a structure that we have there.
Right. Yeah, I think that is there. You have to make marketing a part of every aspect, perhaps, of every activity that is there in the company. So yeah, I think that Chandra, I have to interrupt. I can't hear you all that well. I feel like your voice is coming and going. In your last answer, I didn't want to interrupt, but perhaps you can. I don't know what exactly is the issue.
Maybe it's the headphones issue. Can you hear me okay now?
Now it is fine because it seemed like it was loud and then it was a little low. So perhaps you can just say whatever you were saying again, not the whole answer. Just you were replying to what I had said, and we can take it from here. Is that okay?
Yeah, can you repeat the question if you don't mind?
Sure. So, I think what you said about how marketing needs to become like a core activity and should be enshrined in every aspect of what a company does is very, very important.
Yeah,
I think that becomes like the foundation.
right. So what I was saying was that community becomes essentially the core aspect of marketing. Content and
Right.
community become the core functions of marketing. So instead of you trying out what are the new ideas that will resonate with people, you put
Hmm.
out your ideas and you let them run with it and you let them add their own unique versions of it to your marketing message. And so again, you mix communities work with your own work, right? That travels a
Right.
lot faster, that scales a lot better than just completely vertically integrated teams building and then trying to get community. I mean, I think we're at a time where almost everything that can be imagined can be built fast, especially with
Hmm.
advances in large language models and stuff. Network effects and community will remain the core differentiators for whether you're a company or you're a decentralized project. So it
Hmm.
better be a core competence or at least a core focus area of yours.
Absolutely. Okay, this is all very exciting. Now, I would love to understand from you because you're somebody who has been around for a while. You've been around since nearly the same time as I've been there. You mentioned that, you mined Bitcoin in 2011, and I've been in crypto since the time. What are the kind of changes that you've noticed? And I know that there are some very obvious ones that have happened over the years. But what are the kind of systemic changes that you've seen in the way entrepreneurs are dealing with this tech and how users are responding to it over the years?
Okay. So I would actually say that not much has changed.
Hmm.
The right from the beginning, there were many forks of Bitcoin with different value propositions, right? After
Right.
that, we entered the Turing complete smart contract competition, which is like who wants to be the world computer, which Ethereum pioneered, and there's a bunch of Ethereum killers that came out of that. After that, now we're in this weird meme coin phase or non-fungible token / meme coin phase. So the Bitcoin stands apart from all of these different altcoins in my mind. It has
Hmm.
a unique use case. It has unique value proposition. And in its value proposition, there's no competition. There's
Right.
no second chain that can actually claim to become the stateless money like Bitcoin. So it's unique. Its UVP is secure. Everybody else is actually trying to play the game of what can become the better speculative asset for my users over the short to intermediate term.
Hmm.
Because none of these blockchains, other than DEX coins and some centralized exchange coins, actually can be considered assets in any sort of way. A meme is not a financial asset. It's a speculative asset, and
Hmm.
so the ease with which people can create them, you just need to create an idea, assemble a community around it. I'm just saying it as if it's easy, but that's just, and it appreciates in value and eventually it crashes until
Hmm.
there's more people willing to buy it, right? Like those are the fundamental economics of these memes.
Right.
The fact that it's so easy means that the marginal cost of production will equal the marginal rep, which is
Hmm.
why you see the explosion in these meme coins. And so it becomes harder and harder to identify the outliers, and you'll have like these huge what are called like higher order distribution functions. Like instead of, hey, we have 100 coins, 10 of them will be here, like the nice little distribution that people are used to. Instead, you have like maybe 5 or 6 of them, like WIF or like Shiba or like Doge, will have long life cycle and multi-billion-dollar market caps. The rest of them will become increasingly hard to kind of separate from each other. That's kind of my observation.
Hmm. So it's like the more things kind of change, the more they remain the same because essentially what has remained and what will remain is Bitcoin. These other kind of tokens, they might change in technicality a tad bit, but the essence remains the same. Am I
Yeah, I
summarizing
mean,
it
these
correctly?
these that's right. That's right. I mean, initially it was like, oh, I have another L1, then it's I have another L2, then
Hmm.
it's I can mint NFTs, and then now it's I can create a meme coin. So it's like, the vehicles change, but the underlying dynamics are essentially the same.
Right. Hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it, I think. And I think pretty true as well. So that gives you something to think over and chew on.
Yeah, but
So
the thing is that the markets do want these things. I mean, people do want to
right,
speculate
yeah.
and entertain themselves with these things, and so it's the demand definitely exists
Hmm.
for building the rails to make this seamless, non-custodial, et cetera, et cetera. So from a
Yeah.
project perspective, that's what we look at. It's like we don't actually think about whether these meme coins make any sense or not. We don't spend any time on that. We just like, okay, let's build the best rails because the demand is proof.
Yeah, that is there. Yeah, the market does demand stuff like this, even though at times, you really think it's futile. But well, markets are irrational. People are driven by emotions. So yeah, I understand where
It,
you're coming from, however frustrating it might be.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say I'm frustrated, but these are inherently part of human nature, right? Like,
Yeah.
before the tulip bubble, there were the South Sea bubble, and so on and so forth. So, these manias come and go, especially in times when there's lots of money printing. They tend to accelerate, and
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Now, I want to talk a little about Tides Network as well. You are the CEO there. Can you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, so Tides is the development company.
Okay.
It's we build products in basically cutting edge markets, right? Like as generic as that sounds. It almost sounds like it was workshopped by a PR firm in Madison Avenue, right? But that's exactly what we are. We build cutting edge products in hottest tech market. We've
Okay.
talked so far about Portal. There's another product, same company. It's called Rafa.ai. It's the world's
Okay.
best investing co-pilot. It's your users can check out Rafa.ai as well. And that's also a product of ours, built by a team of ex-NVIDIA engineers. It's simply like having an entire team of asset managers, like a portfolio manager, a risk analyst, a CFA, a financial planner, a tax planner, all of those in your pocket. And there are all these different
Interesting.
agents that specialize in different areas. And depending on your preferences, they can help you invest better in traditional financial markets as well as in crypto. So we're starting to incorporate a lot of crypto. Eventually, the goal is to incorporate like the higher risk curve as well, including the meme coin stuff like that.
That's interesting. I'm sure to check it out. And so primarily, you are like a studio, like a venture studio, or are you taking on other projects as well and building
We are
like
not
as
a
a service?
studio. We're not a
Okay.
studio. We are a company with product lines because a venture
Okay.
studio comes up with an idea. It then takes it to a certain, stage and then hires other people and then kind of recycles that capital into other projects. We're not like that. We actually own the entire life cycle of all of the products that we build.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. Now I want to again go back to some, macro part of the market. I would love to understand from you about blockchain, just interoperability, and especially, it has always been a little bit of a hot topic. Obviously, it comes, like you've mentioned earlier, it comes with its own security concerns. How do you see this kind of evolving further? We had the bridges, and you have created a product which is solely for Bitcoin. But do you see
It's not solely for
something?
Bitcoin though. So it's an interoperability protocol.
Hmm.
So right now it works with Bitcoin, ETH L2s, EVM compatible chains. Soon it'll have Solana. So our
Okay.
goal is to actually have all of the top blockchains
Okay.
compatible with Bitcoin.
Okay, awesome. That's wonderful. I think it's great to create ecosystem around your product, and that is essentially what you're doing. So, what are the kind of key vulnerabilities, perhaps, that you feel right now that kind of plague our ecosystem at large, especially when it comes to interoperability, DeFi, or just these tokens that keep coming up, the newer tokens, newer L2s. If you could tell us a little in some broad strokes, what do you feel are the key vulnerabilities plaguing the market currently?
Vulnerabilities meaning like for the users or like just the market sentiment.
I feel that it'll be better if you answer it from both perspectives, from the market perspective as well as from the user perspective.
Sure. So from a user perspective, anytime you're dealing with these DeFi interoperability protocols, there's three types of these, right? Like one we discussed, which is called bridging. The other one is the protocols that do message passing between different blockchains, and that provides no additional security than any other bridge or wrapper. security always comes at the cost of convenience. So hidden custodial risk is the biggest concern, I would say, for as it should be for any user. The second thing I would say is, I mean, custody has always proven to be risky for anyone. So self-custody is the way to go, whether you're just storing your coins or trading, or I would recommend non-custodial, fully secure, trusted system.
Okay.
Because the biggest risk that can happen is like a repeat of FTX, a repeat of UST Luna, or any of the other things that we've seen, right? WBTC depegging could happen. I mean, all of these toys come with hidden risks. So anything could have a systemic effect, and then you're back into the deep, long bear market again.
Right, yeah, that's true. So, and what about like from the perspective of the ecosystem of the market in general? What are the kind of vulnerabilities that you foresee and that you feel that are plaguing currently the market at large?
I think a lot of regulatory clarity, especially in the US, has been very positive.
Right.
The ETF inflows into Bitcoin don't directly affect the alt markets, but indirectly, the profits taken from the price appreciation in Bitcoin usually tends to bleed off into altcoins, and so that's a positive. I don't actually see any short-term risks. I think we are still in phase 3, beginning of phase 4 of the market. Bitcoin is going to go a lot higher, and the volatility in the short term in the altcoin markets will become more. But I think generally the markets will go higher in rest of 2024, and if not, beginning of 2025, and well into March.
Okay, awesome. What are the kind of bigger challenges that do come to your mind while building a trust minimized cross-chain solution, and how have you addressed them when you are creating Portal?
Right. So, well, like you said, when you claim to do something that hasn't been done before, and when you claim that security is non-negotiable and we will never compromise on that, you better be sure that your claims are true, right? So it all comes down to security, making sure, triple checking everything, thinking about all of the edge cases, having a lot of different eyes, not just one, checkbox audit, making sure that the architecture is super well thought out. There's a lot of research and engineering that goes into designing these things. And, that takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of patient investors who are willing to wait for a long period of time. So that's the biggest challenge. I mean, it's easy to copy pasta something and say, hey, we're going to just do another aggregator for perps, right? How many hidden layers of risk are in there? Nobody knows. No one knows.
Right.
No one can measure. So when we make strong claims like this, the toughest part is actually delivering what we promise.
Yeah.
And not compromising or trying to, somehow obscure a lack of security with a lot of technical jargon, as a lot of projects tend to do.
Right. Yeah. Just I think it's important to deliver on what you're promising. I think that is the most important part especially when you're creating something which is completely consumer facing, because they tend to be more impatient as a user segment with your product. So looking ahead a little bit, how do you see the adoption of custody-less cross-chain solutions evolving in the next 5 years, perhaps? Because maybe not 5 years, maybe in 2 years, because 5 years is a really long time in Web3.
Right. Like, I mean, okay, so 5 years seems like a long time, but Uniswap wasn't there in 2019, right? So these things have been growing quite rapidly. If you look at DEX volumes from just 2 to 3 years ago to now, last I checked, DEX volume, weekly volume was around 60 billion or something. Now it's 80. So it's these things have taken over very rapidly, even though you don't have a native Bitcoin DEX. So with the native Bitcoin DEX, I think centralized exchanges will start to face a lot of competition, and DEXs will do very well. I think if I'm not wrong, in 5 years' time, they will be at least as big as the centralized exchanges, at least by trading volume, because it makes no sense to for any project to have to pay and deal with these, the amount of money it costs. This is a public public information, right? Like this is not some secret information that I'm giving out. It's openly verifiable that sex share of the market has rapidly decreased and it'll continue to.
Right. So,
So
you feel that it's only gonna obviously grow in the next 5 years, and especially because there have been some bad cases with centralized entities, so DEXs, etc., and should grow more. You feel that the users are becoming more aware, and there are more people because we do want to create solutions for everybody. At least every entrepreneur wants to do that in Web3 for mass adoption, getting more people involved in Web3. At times, centralized solutions are easier, for newer users. Keeping that
for
in mind,
sure.
do you still feel that, decentralized exchanges and other such solutions would potentially grow more? You feel that the user would be open to using such solutions where the onus is more on them?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because if you remember, like the first DEX was Ether Delta. And it was, I don't know if you
Yeah,
ever used it. It was horrible experience, right?
yeah, very, very
On-chain
bad
order
UI.
book.
Yeah, yeah.
And so compare that to how Uniswap or Radium work now. They're single chain DEXs still, and then we are bringing that to a cross chain DEX. So whatever chain you're on, you're going to get the same experience as a centralized exchange. Maybe a little slow, but the SEX demands that you deposit your stuff there, and when you ask for your tokens back, you may not get that risk doesn't exist. And I think a lot of the user base doesn't want that, which is reflected in the DEX volumes being like absolute bonkers. It'll only continue to grow. I mean, this is not a question where I have to guess whether people will adopt DEX. They've already shown that they're rapidly adopting DEX in the face of centralized exchanges providing cheaper fee and more liquidity. They're still adopting DEXs at a much faster. So yeah, I think it'll continue.
Okay, yeah, that's a very positive outlook to have. Are there any emerging technologies or trends that you believe will have a deeper impact on the future of the Web3 ecosystem as a whole? Are there any trends that you feel are here to stay and they would really change the narrative perhaps in the coming few years?
Yes, a lot of the DeFi things work on other.
Would you like to give any
So
examples like of
yeah,
anything in
so
particular?
so
Yeah.
token issuance on like stablecoin issuance, real world asset, derivative products like perps, they will all be built on Bitcoin. I mean, we're already doing that work. You'll see all
Hmm.
of those on Portal Dex. So most of the and there are other developers picking up where we've created the primitives and working on some of these projects. We'll highlight some of them. But yeah, almost everything that succeeds from meme coins to DeFi will be rebuilt on Bitcoin.
That is a good way to look at it. Do you have a perspective on Willow that has been recently launched by Alphabet? There's a lot of chatter on Twitter about that as well.
About what? I'm sorry. What was that was recently launched?
Alphabet has recently announced Willow, right? Their quantum computing, the newest
Oh,
thing that they have
oh,
now. Yeah,
okay. Oh, Willow, their 105 qubit quantum computer. Well,
right.
I mean, I am not a quantum computing expert, so I won't feign expertise there. But my understanding, really including like Rigetti, which is another supercomputing company along with Deep, is that after they published their first quantum supremacy paper, that
Hmm.
was quickly read by within the almost time. So and the authors admit that happens to them as well. So it sounds like it's an interesting thing if you're deep into that space from a research perspective. I don't see that's relevant to Bitcoin any near. Even
Okay.
if we do, you have to understand that the signature algorithms that we use, the elliptic curves, etc., are vulnerable to quantum, but the hash functions are not.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of like misinformation, I think, on Twitter. A lot of people heralding the end of the encryption on Bitcoin, and it's so frustrating to read it because then you're thinking that's just not how it works. Because
Right.
and but
Yeah, I mean these
it
these
is
are
also
things
not
that have been
easy.
discussed.
Yeah,
Sorry, go
it's
on.
also not easy. It's also not easy to explain it to these people who are, perhaps writing these long threads about how Willow kind of threatens the
Well,
encryption
most
of
of them are
Bitcoin.
probably written by an LLM, and these are topics that discuss on Bitcoin talk forums ad nauseam all the way
Exactly.
for
Yeah.
10 years. So
Yeah.
nothing new.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. This is not new, but you you do feel like a lot of people giving it importance, and then it kind of frustrates you. But what you're saying is right. I think I should take it with a little bit of pinch of salt. That okay, it's fine. Whoever's
For
writing
sure,
this thing,
because
yeah,
people want attention, and
yeah,
sensationalism creates attention. It's
yeah,
sensational, new, scary, and some enterprising entrepreneur may even say, "Hey, I've invented quantum," so give me money, right? Like there's all sorts of
yeah.
schemes. At the end of the day, hash or not, we have quantum strength, of which there are some already, or you can
Yeah,
rely on information theory. So there's many topics that for years.
yeah, that's
Nothing
true.
new.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I think, and I think it is a good perspective to have that people just like sensationalism nowadays, and they will say anything for attention. Even though it's completely factually incorrect, it hardly matters. But yeah, I'm glad that we touched upon that as well. And now we are kind of running short on time, so I'll ask you my two last questions before we wrap this up. You mentioned how your background has been very atypical, but you were a physician and now you are a builder. You're an entrepreneur. You built a robust technology which has seen rave reviews from your community. If you had to give say advice to a builder or a new entrepreneur entering the space right now, what would it be?
Any advice to a new entrepreneur entering Web3 space specifically?
Yeah.
I would say find a real problem to solve. I would say there are markets that are super interesting to us, and I'll name one. Obviously, nobody has to list, they'll find their own niche. But the most interesting markets to us are where the demand has proven, and it already. Look at in-games, right? Every Web3 gaming company tries to go about set up. They say, oh, we're going to build a blockchain on which games can be built,
Right.
and let's sell tokens. Instead of saying, we're going to build the absolute best gaming experience, no matter how
Yeah.
long it takes, and get a
Yeah.
lot of users interested, build these games, create a culture and a cult around it, and then we're going to introduce mechanisms to trade those in-game assets. So, that'd be my advice. Go about things the right way, even if it takes time, because that's the only way we're doing things.
I think that's good advice. That's really good advice. Find a real problem to solve and really just go about it in the right way. I think a lot of builders just sort of latch onto whatever is trending currently and they start building in that direction. Like you said, every day there is a new L2, and that has to stop. Some rationality has to enter the space as well, specifically when it comes to use cases.
Right. And then the incentives of investors who invested, they want to pump it. There's all sorts of misaligned incentives, but you won't get your time back. So you better focus on something that is going to be valuable in the long term. Things that don't change are actually more powerful than things that are constantly changing.
Well, that's a quotable quote. Lovely. So, Chandra, again, this has been a very wonderful conversation, very insightful. I can't wait to try the portal myself. I have it saved and bookmarked right after this conversation. I'm going to try to see how I can get in. And thank you for making the time. But this is one question that I do ask everybody who comes on the show, even though you kind of covered it in the other answers that you've given. If you had to give suggestions to somebody who is still looking at this particular space with a little bit of skepticism, Web3 in general, what would be your suggestions to them for them to start living on blockchain?
Start with Bitcoin.
Yeah, I thought that you would say that.
Kind of easy to predict, right?
Yeah, no, I think that is something that I have said a lot as well. That you just stick to, don't play around with altcoins when you're just starting off. Like, right, it doesn't make sense to do that. Start with something
Right.
robust
Spend a
because
lot.
otherwise, yeah, they will lose their trust, right, as soon as they're entering.
Right. Your first taste can't be terrible. So start
Yeah.
with start with the best. Understand Bitcoin as deeply as you can, and then branch off into other stuff that interests.
Okay, lovely. Any resources or any kind of books or courses that you want to recommend to our users, listeners? I'm sorry.
I would love to. There's actually a great resource. Andreessen Horowitz, the VC firm, had this crypto canon. I don't know
Right.
if it's still available online. That'd be actually a pretty good resource. It
Okay.
takes you all the way back to, the invention of Shoei Cash, way down to holograph, innovate. So that's something I would strongly recommend. If someone's entering this space and has a
Hmm.
long-term interest, yeah, that's a great resource.
Yeah, I think it is.
I haven't visited this particular page. I just looked it up in a long time, but yeah, it's still there. I'll definitely put this in the description as well. So thank you for reminding me as well of this particular resource. I think it's a great resource, and not a lot of people actually talk about this, strangely, because perhaps it's older. And off late, I've never heard anybody recommend it. So thank you for that. Thank you once again, Chandra, for this very insightful conversation. All the best for your mainnet, and I'll sure to test out their testnet and send you some feedback.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Again, for your listeners, nodes.portal2bitcoin.com. That's where our incentivized testnet is if you're interested in earning a light node. And thank you for being a gracious host. And I've enjoyed this conversation very much.
Likewise. Thank you so much.